I, Kathleen Babineaux Blanco,
do solemnly swear
that
I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States
that I will support the Constitution
et les lois des États-Unis
et les lois des États-Unis
et la Constitution et les lois de cet État
et la Constitution et les lois de cet État.
In the 1980s, a woman running for top political office in Louisiana was considered out of the norm. But for Kathleen Babineaux Blanco, a person of deep faith and a trailblazer, the journey to the state's top office was her destiny, a fulfillment of God-given gifts, personal grit, and determination.
As a young girl, I dreamed of the possibilities and opportunities that my mother and her mother would never have imagined. And my mother still can't imagine what's happened. Today marks the first time that an honor such as this has been earned by a daughter, a wife, a mother, a grandmother.
Legislature, Public Service Commission, Lieutenant Governor. You got to be good to do that. It's like winning the NFL 4 times in a row. No woman has ever done it, and no woman would ever do it in our lifetime.
Kathleen Babineaux Blanco was born on December 15, 1942. She is the eldest of 7 children, of Louis Babineaux and the former Lucille Freeman, both of Cajun ancestry. She grew up in the tiny hamlet of Coteau, deep in the heart of Acadiana.
I used to joke with her all the time. They don't even have a blinking light in a place called Coteau. They were in the middle of it, but in a very rural area where the children all spoke French on the playground.
When Kathleen was 14, the family moved to nearby New Iberia, where she attended Mount Carmel Academy, an all-girls Catholic school. In 1964, she graduated from the University of Southwestern Louisiana with a degree in business education.
She had to commute every day for 4 years, which is very difficult. Had to have unbelievable determination. She had a school job, and it ended at 6:30 or 7 o'clock. Come home, get back up at 5, and come back.
In August of that same year, she married the love of her life, Raymond Blanco, a football coach and educator.
I had heard about her from one of the youngest aunt. There are 10 aunts and uncles of hers, and they would talk about Kathleen, and they said, you know, she's rather reserved. So I really pursued her for about 3 or 4 or 5 years. I mean, I had to kind of work at it. I had never done that before. And but she was very kind, but very much in charge.
Kathleen began her career as a business teacher at Breaux Bridge High School and then worked as a stay-at-home mom for their 6 children for almost 15 years before rejoining the workforce.
I saw her ability to nurture. She came from a large family. She had a large family of her own, but what she included in the real heartfelt life of her family was far greater than the blood relatives.
It was a dedication to her larger family that brought Kathleen to serve the greater public good. Her first job outside of her home since teaching was in 1980, when she served as district manager for the U.S. Census Bureau. 3 years later, she became the first woman from Acadiana elected to the Louisiana House of Representatives, one of only 5 women in both houses of the legislature. During the 5 years in the House, Blanco was vice chairman of the Education Committee and served on transportation and other panels. In 1988, she became the first woman in Louisiana elected to the Public Service Commission and the first to chair the PSC. Following years of service, she set her sights on the capital city, and this time to the second highest state office, She was successful. Kathleen became Louisiana's 50th lieutenant governor in 1996.
Let us never forget that if we put the people first, all of our other priorities will inevitably fall into place.
A year later, she experienced the greatest loss in her life. Her 19-year-old son, Ben, was killed in an industrial accident. For Kathleen, with the heartfelt pain of tragedy, came a deeper understanding of the struggles of others. She was committed to making Louisiana a better place for all. As the state's second in command, she presided over the Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism. Marketing Louisiana as a top travel destination was a high priority.
Bonsoir, je suis Kathleen Babineaux Blanco, lieutenant-gouverneur de la Louisiane.
It was a joyful time for the state, as the lieutenant governor of Acadian descent led celebrations commemorating 300 years of French culture in Louisiana.
Ceci, le papa de mon grand-papa. Voilà.
Modeled after the Congrès Mondial Acadien in New Brunswick, Louisiana's Francofête festivals, promoting language, food, and music, were held throughout the state. Travelers from around the world were captivated by our rich heritage and culture. In 2004, after 8 years of service, she had built Louisiana's tourism into a record-breaking $9 billion industry that created 21,000 new jobs. Breaking records continued for Kathleen Blanco. She put in her bid for the #1 position in the state.
The question is,
in the final crucial round of debates with opponent Bobby Jindal, the lieutenant governor's humanity became visible for all to see. In the live statewide broadcast, the moderator asked the candidate to share a defining personal moment of their lives. With tears filling her eyes, Kathleen responded.
The most defining moment in my life came when I lost a child.
Whether it was letting down personal barriers or her position on health care issues that swayed voters, Kathleen Babineaux Blanco beat her opponent by a 52 to 48% margin. On January 12, 2004, she became the first woman to serve as governor of Louisiana.
She entered office with the goal of enhancing childhood education and making sure that every child had early childhood education. Also, that every child in this state had adequate health care. And she did a lot in those two areas. And I think they were informed not by political reasons, not by political calculations, but by her faith.
And I think that brought her to her professions as a teacher and legislator and governor. And if you look at the things that she focused on, it really was about improving people's lives.
She had a heart for education. She had a heart for Louisiana's children. She would always say that education was poverty's mortal enemy.
As governor, she directed increased funding in education from pre-K through college. She traveled internationally, promoting Louisiana businesses. She led trade missions to Cuba, China, Japan, and other countries worldwide. And she visited with U.S. troops serving abroad.
She had come from being lieutenant governor, so she had an eye for and she knew the importance of marketing Louisiana and positioning Louisiana.
Kathleen's strength and determination were greatly influenced by her personal role models. Her mother, Lucille Freeman Babineaux, was an outspoken woman, very gentle but strong in her own unique way. Considered warm and engaging by many, she was still cutting her own grass at age 90. In the summer of 2005, Governor Blanco's spirit of caring and strength were put to an extreme test. Within 2 years of her election, 2 massive hurricanes struck coastal Louisiana less than a month apart.
It is heartbreaking. The magnitude of it is overwhelming. It's just tough right now. And there are people who are helping everywhere. We have to try to control the physical situation and get that water out. I don't know when that's going to happen. We have to worry about lives first. And so we're trying to establish places where we can get them to safety. Time is not on our side.
There were conversations in Congress about whether we should rebuild New Orleans, whether one of America's great cities would be rebuilt, how much money should be put into the recovery. There was a lot of blame game and whose fault it was.
They were willing to let us hang out and blame us for everything. It was as though Louisiana was to blame for the hurricane. I was fighting for money, for billions of dollars, and they didn't want to give it up. And I went to the president's office. I said, you've got to help me get $4 billion more on top of what the original allotment was. They didn't really want to help me, but, you know, I had to do a little maneuvering and a little threatening to go to war, you know, whatever.
I saw in her a dogged determination to get what Louisiana needed. And she didn't care who she offended. She didn't care who she alienated. She didn't care whose toes she stepped on. And I don't think people truly appreciate how much she really cared about the rebuilding of that city from the very first day. That she knew that she was going to do whatever she could to make sure that city came back, and she did.
The day that the Saints played in the Superdome, the following September, 1 year later, was the most exciting time, the most excitement I had ever seen in the city of New Orleans. It was electrifying. If we had not been able to get that building ready in time for that game, Tom Benson was going to move the Saints to Texas, and it would have been the San Antonio Saints and not the New Orleans Saints.
She had no doubt. And while there were critics and people who said, you know, we weren't fast enough or it wasn't strong enough, for her, I think it was really a moment of thinking about her faith, thinking about the people of Louisiana, and really being committed to making sure that Louisiana was stronger and better.
I was blessed and chosen to lead at probably Louisiana's most difficult time. And so when I think about where God placed me, right in the way of the most terrible storms ever to hit this nation, and so many people so painfully injured, I know that I was the right person at the right time because God made that decision. I certainly didn't make it.
Katrina and the aftermath of Katrina is how a lot of people know Kathleen. And despite all the pressures of the world and all the political pressures, she kept fighting and determined to pull our state out of that, and I think she succeeded.
Through her leadership, funding and guidelines were provided to strengthen the entire state and provide a foundation for the recovery of coastal Louisiana. After 24 years in elective office, Governor Blanco retired from public service. When she left office, the state had balanced budgets and a $2 billion surplus. She began writing her memoirs and lecturing nationwide on a wide range of topics, including economic development, education reform, and disaster preparation.
I think she stands for all the good things that we want Louisiana to stand for. A sense of community, a sense of public service, a sense of pride, a sense of trailblazing. I think Kathleen is a wonderful role model for anyone who's interested not only in just public service, but how to live your life.
So I think history will remember her as a person who was committed to Louisiana, who loved Louisiana, who worked tirelessly every day to make Louisiana better.
She just treated people with great dignity.
The Honorable Kathleen Babineaux Blanco, daughter, wife, mother, grandmother, and former governor of Louisiana, died in her Lafayette home, surrounded by family. In keeping with her lifelong commitment to improving lives and communities, the University of Louisiana at Lafayette has created the Blanco Public Policy Center, promoting the role of women in politics, governmental ethics, and improving social services are among the roles of the center. In 2015, Louisiana Public Broadcasting honored Governor Blanco as a Louisiana legend, and I had the privilege and pleasure to sit with her as she talked about some of her experiences and her love of Louisiana. Once a governor, always a governor. I'd like to call you Kathleen, but Governor Blanco is something. And once you were a governor, I guess you always end up thinking about what it's like to be a governor. Do you ever give up being it? Do you constantly examine issues and read the morning paper and think, if I were governor, I would do this?
Every day, Beth. I don't think you ever get away from it.
Yeah.
I think I know too much from the inside, and I look at it with a very clear eye. I think, and maybe some would call it a critical eye, but I feel like I know what's going on intuitively.
Do you talk to other former governors ever?
Yes, I do. We got together a year or so ago with Governor Foster, Governor Romer, and Governor Edwards. And we invited them to join us in Lafayette for dinner, and we had a great evening. And we've been on several forum panels together, and I thought that was quite enjoyable as well.
I've been reviewing some of the documents we have in our archives, and I was back and looking at one of the very first debates we were doing. And when you were running for office, in the debate, there was all this controversy about a woman running for governor. Did you find that they treated you differently because you were the first woman governor, but it was a hard road there?
Well, it was a challenging campaign, and what I really learned from a prior experience was that I needed to raise money, and I needed to raise it early to be taken seriously. And I think that's one of the elements of being able to be in a very large statewide race. It was something that didn't come naturally to me, that I had to learn and teach myself to do and discipline myself to do. But it presents you in a different light when you're successful that way.
You seemed so natural when you were talking in those debates. You actually answered the questions. These days, it seems so structured that you have spins and people are telling you how you should answer and all this. It seems like things have changed a little bit, don't you?
I think that's one of the things that drives me crazy. Yeah. When people who are running for office are asked a direct question, they find a million answers other than the answer to that question. You know then they don't want to answer it. They consider it a firebrand answer of some sort that will displease some segment of the population. You don't know what they stand for and what they believe in. If they just launch attack bombs and not really address their ideas, I think that they cheat themselves out of an opportunity to let the people know who they are and what they're about.
I was looking at your inauguration, and what a joy-filled day. Was that a day that you felt, were you excited? Were you anxious? Did you feel the weight of being the first female governor?
Yes, I did.
All of the above.
All of the above. There was some early anticipation. My nervousness always reflects itself before the event, not once the event is on. When you're on, then I just relax and let it happen. My daughters and some very talented people planned a wonderful inauguration day because it incorporated children. You are my sunshine, my sunshine, make me happy. And so many times our inaugurations are really events for adults. But there were so many mothers who brought their daughters. They brought sons as well, but I think that mothers of daughters made a special point to bring them to my inauguration, to let them know that they too could be anything they wanted, even something that was never traditionally done by a woman.
I was wondering, do you think you governed differently because you were a woman, or the same? Was there a style that was different?
I had my own style, and I'm not sure that it was because I was a woman. I had been in office for a number of years, for about 20 years, and I was always very observant. I spent 5 years in the legislature and 7 at the Public Service Commission and 8 as lieutenant governor. But wherever I was watching the legislature because that's where laws are made and abolished or redrafted and amended. All kinds of things are happening. So that's the kind of the heartthrob of governance right there. And I particularly love education and think it's a major priority. So I spent extra time paying attention to how education was being handled, whether it was being privatized or marginalized. I also knew that when you dictate from the top down, you have failure. I saw that happen. When you bring people in to make decisions about the work they're going to do or the lives they're going to lead, you get a much better work product, you get more cooperation. What people help to build, they will help to defend, and they will embrace.
Nothing could prepare one for the most defining event in recent history in Louisiana. If Hurricanes Katrina followed a month later by Hurricane Rita, looking back on that time, do you relive it? Do you have nightmares about it?
I don't have nightmares, but I think about it, and I think about how it was so unsettling in those very first days.
I remember being with you when you went on CNN, just on the Larry King show, I think it was, and we were in our studios. It was hot. The generators were running because we had no power in Baton Rouge. Everything was off too. And you had just come back from the Superdome. And I remember you saying to me, I have to get them out right now, Beth. I have to get them out.
It was nightmarish. The Superdome began to fill up as people were pulled from their homes and from their rooftops. The Superdome was the place where everybody believed we were going to get the FEMA buses in very quickly. There was a huge gap in response there. But the rescuers were bringing people to the dome, and I began to hear all kinds of rumors about the dome. And finally one afternoon, I said, I've got to get there myself. I just have to see what's going on. And I went in and I talked to several of the people there. And I made that assessment, and that is when I saw you, Beth, it was growing rapidly in numbers of people who were bringing small children and sickly people, and it was just very worrisome, and the conditions were bad because every system had gone down in New Orleans. Certainly there was no air conditioning, but there was no water and there was no sewage after a time, and all of that led to a very difficult situation, a very miserable situation for a whole lot of people.
Well, you decided that you weren't going to run for re-election, though. Do you ever regret that?
No, Beth. The reason I didn't regret it is because I could tell that my health was being put in jeopardy, and nobody takes care of you except yourself. The stress of fighting on so many fronts to build a strong foundation for recovery finally wore me out. We were working 18-hour days for months on end, months and months, and it just demanded that work product. I had to get into Washington, D.C. and fight for Louisiana's right to be treated as a respectful citizen of the United States. They were favoring Mississippi. It was highly partisan. It was highly politicized. I just never dreamed that would ever happen that way, but now I know better. You know, I never thought I was naive until that experience, and I thought, well, how dare they politicize this trauma that has injured so many people? And I just took great umbrage. I had to call on an apology from the Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert, who said that we really should never rebuild New Orleans. I mean, who ever heard of building a city below sea level? Well, you know, Mr. Hastert has his own problems today, but it is just, unthinkable that anybody would be that calloused.
Well, now you look 10 years and it looks like, things are coming back, certainly in that devastated area.
Things are coming back
They
around.
are. Well, you have such a wonderful family, and your partnership with Coach. A lot of us have seen all these films about the good wife supporting the male politician. Well, I don't know whether he's the good coach, but he's certainly been the supporter of you.
Raymond is an amazing man. Before I ever ran for office, he was a perfectly spoiled husband and did not know how to boil water. I did everything for him and for the children, even though I was teaching the children to be independent at the same time, but I was not teaching him to be independent. I took care of his every single need. So when I decided to run for office, he got very nervous about the whole concept. And we had to have a long sit down and examine the pros and cons. What do you win when you win? What do you lose when you win? You lose some things. You lose family togetherness sometimes.
I guess the thing that I think about you all the time as you were lieutenant governor and then as you were governor is reflected in your genuine love for everything about Louisiana.
Louisiana is truly the most amazing state in the Union. It's got such a diversity of people who bring great talents. We're such a hospitable people. As lieutenant governor, it was so easy to sell Louisiana because our people are so warm and welcoming. You can find that sometimes in other states, but I think you have to go to more touristy places to find that. In Louisiana, it doesn't matter where you are. I mean, you might just be on the side of the road and need a lift or something. You might have a flat tire, and somebody kind and wonderful is going to stop and help you. And so it's you know, we've got this great joie de vivre, this spirit that permeates our lives, and we love life and we love company. We love to show it off.